Deep beneath a divided city, far below the noise of traffic and the watchful eyes of guards, something was happening that no one on the surface could see. In complete silence, hidden from the world, a tunnel was being carved through the earth, meter by meter, inch by people who knew that if they were discovered, the consequences wouldn't just be failure, but an international crisis. This wasn't an escape route, and it wasn't built for transportation. It had a single purpose: to listen. To tap into the most sensitive communications of an enemy that was constantly watching, constantly preparing, and constantly trying to stay one step ahead. At a time when tensions between global powers were at their peak, when a single miscalculation could trigger a war unlike anything the world had ever seen, information was the most valuable weapon of all, and this tunnel was designed to steal it. For months, the operation remained completely hidden, operating in the shadows, collecting secrets that were never meant to be heard. But then, something happened. The secret didn't stay buried forever. One day, the tunnel was exposed, and what was discovered inside didn't just surprise intelligence agencies. It shocked the entire world, because this wasn't just a story about a hidden passage underground. It was a story about deception, risk, and a plan so bold that it should never have worked in the first place. To understand why something like this was even attempted, you have to go back to one of the most tense and dangerous periods in modern history, the era of the Cold War. A time when the United States and the Soviet Union weren't fighting each other directly, but were locked in a constant battle for power, influence, and information. At the center of this conflict was Berlin, a city literally split in two, where the line between opposing sides wasn't just political, it was physical. On one side, Western allies. On the other, Soviet-controlled territory. And between them, a constant game of surveillance and counter-surveillance, where both sides were desperate to know what the other was planning. In a world before advanced satellites and modern digital spying, gathering intelligence required creativity, precision, and sometimes extreme risk. Traditional methods weren't enough. Listening posts could only capture so much, and human intelligence came with its own dangers. So a new idea began to take shape, an idea that seemed almost impossible. What if instead of trying to intercept signals from a distance, they could get directly underneath the source? What if they could physically tap into the enemy's communication lines, hearing conversations in real time, completely undetected? It was a plan that sounded insane, risky, and nearly impossible to execute. And yet against all odds, it was put into motion. What followed would become one of the most daring intelligence operations of its time, an operation that would later be known as Operation Gold. To understand how an operation like this could even exist, you have to step into a world that was defined by tension, suspicion, and constant uncertainty: the Cold War. This was not a traditional war with open battles and visible front lines. Instead, it was a silent struggle for power between two global giants: the United States and the Soviet Union. Both sides possessed immense military strength, including nuclear weapons capable of destroying entire cities. And because of that, direct conflict was too dangerous to risk. So instead, the war was fought in shadows, through espionage, intelligence gathering, and strategic maneuvering. At the center of this global standoff was Berlin, a city that had become a physical representation of division. After World War II, Berlin was split into sectors controlled by different powers. The western part was aligned with the United States and its allies, while the eastern part fell under Soviet control. This division turned Berlin into one of the most heavily monitored and politically sensitive locations in the world. Every street, every building, every movement carried significance. Intelligence agencies operated constantly, trying to gather even the smallest piece of information that could provide an advantage. Our conversations, troop movements, strategic plans, everything mattered. But obtaining that information was incredibly difficult. Both sides were aware of the constant surveillance, and they took extreme measures to protect their secrets. This created a problem. Traditional methods of intelligence gathering were no longer enough. Listening posts could be detected, informants could be exposed, signals could be encrypted. The need for a new approach became increasingly clear. And that's where the idea of something far more ambitious began to take shape. Instead of trying to observe from the outside, what if they could go underneath? beneath the barriers, beneath the guards, beneath the entire system of surveillance that defined the Cold War battlefield. Because in a world where everything above ground was being watched, the only place left to hide was below it. The concept of building a tunnel into enemy-controlled territory was not just bold, it was almost unthinkable. It required a level of planning, coordination, and secrecy that few operations could achieve. And yet, in the high-stakes environment of the Cold War, where information could determine the outcome of global events, even the most extreme ideas were considered. The objective was clear: intercept communication lines used by the Soviet Union. These lines carried critical information, military orders, strategic discussions, and operational details that could provide invaluable insight into Soviet activities. If these communications could be accessed, it would offer a direct window into the thinking and planning of one of the most powerful nations in the world. But the challenges were immense. The tunnel would need to be constructed without detection, starting from the western side of Berlin and extending into the eastern sector. It would have to reach a precise location where the communication lines could be tapped, and it would need to remain completely hidden throughout the process. The risks were just as significant as the potential rewards. If the operation were discovered, it could trigger a major international incident. The political consequences alone could escalate tensions between the United States and the Soviet Union to dangerous levels. And yet, despite these risks, the decision was made to proceed. Because in the world of espionage, the value of information often outweighs the danger required to obtain it. This was not just a plan, it was a gamble. A calculated risk taken in the belief that the potential gains would justify the effort. And once that decision was made, there was no turning back. Turning the idea into reality required an extraordinary level of precision and secrecy. The construction of the tunnel had to be carried out in a way that avoided detection at every stage. This meant working quietly, carefully, and often slowly, ensuring that no signs of the operation reached the surface. The tunnel itself had to meet strict requirements. It needed to be long enough to reach the target location, stable enough to prevent collapse, and equipped with the necessary infrastructure to support its purpose. This included ventilation systems, lighting, and space for the equipment required to tap into the communication lines. Engineers and workers involved in the project operated under conditions of extreme secrecy. Every detail was controlled, every movement monitored. The success of the operation depended not just on technical skill, but on the ability to remain completely hidden. As the tunnel extended further underground, the tension increased. Each new section brought it closer to its target, but also increased the risk of discovery. One mistake, one unexpected noise, one small sign of activity could expose the entire operation. And yet, despite these challenges, the work continued. Day after day, the tunnel grew, moving closer to its objective. It was a slow and methodical process, driven by the understanding that the stakes were incredibly high. Because once the tunnel reached its destination, the real operation would begin. When the tunnel was finally completed and the communication lines were accessed, the operation entered its most critical phase. This was the moment where all the planning, effort, and risk would either pay off or prove to be in vain. And the ability to tap into these lines provided a direct connection to the internal communications of the Soviet Union. Conversations that were never meant to be heard were now being recorded and analyzed. Military strategies, logistical details, and operational plans began to emerge. For intelligence analysts, this was a breakthrough. The information gathered offered insights that were previously impossible to obtain. It allowed for a deeper understanding of Soviet activities and intentions, providing a potential advantage in the ongoing Cold War. But this success also brought new challenges. The volume of information was vast, and it needed to be processed quickly and accurately. At the same time, the operation had to remain hidden. Any indication that the communications were being monitored could lead to immediate exposure. For a period of time, the tunnel achieved exactly what it was designed to do. It provided access to valuable intelligence, operating quietly beneath the surface while the world above remained unaware. But in an operation like this, secrecy is never guaranteed to last forever. Eventually, the secret did not remain hidden. The tunnel was discovered, and the operation was exposed to the world. What had once been a carefully controlled and highly classified mission suddenly became a public revelation. The discovery sent shockwaves through the international community, confirmed the extent to which both sides were willing to go in their efforts to gain an advantage. The political implications were immediate and significant. Questions began to emerge. How had such an operation gone undetected for so long? What information had been obtained? Perhaps most importantly, how had it been discovered? The exposure of the tunnel marked the end of the operation. But it also raised deeper questions about the nature of espionage and the risks involved in such missions. Because in a world where secrets are everything, the moment they are revealed can change everything. As more information became available, a surprising detail began to emerge. The possibility that the operation had been compromised long before it was officially discovered. This introduced a new layer of complexity to the story. The idea that the Soviet Union may have been aware of the tunnel raised important questions. If they knew about it, why allow it to continue? What information might they have chosen to share or withhold? This possibility suggests that the operation was not just a one-sided effort, but part of a larger and more intricate game of intelligence and counterintelligence. In this game, deception plays a crucial role. Information can be controlled, manipulated, and used strategically. This revelation changes how the operation is viewed. What once seemed like a bold success becomes more ambiguous. Was it a breakthrough in intelligence gathering, or a carefully managed situation that served multiple purposes? In the end, the story of Operation Gold is not just about a tunnel. It is about the complexity of espionage, the risks of seeking information, and the reality that in the world of intelligence, things are rarely as simple as they appear. As this story comes to an end, what makes it truly unforgettable isn't just the tunnel itself, it's what it represents. It's the idea that during one of the most tense periods in history, people were willing to dig beneath a divided city, risking everything just to hear what the other side was saying, shows how powerful information really is. The operation behind Operation Gold wasn't just about engineering or espionage, it was about control, strategy, and the constant battle for advantage between the United States and the Soviet Union. And what makes it even more fascinating is that even after all the effort, all the secrecy, and all the risk, the outcome wasn't as clear as it first seemed. Because in the world of intelligence, success and failure often exist at the same time. The tunnel may have been hidden underground, but the impact of what it revealed reached far beyond it. It exposed just how far nations were willing to go in the shadows, where the real battles of the Cold War were being fought not with tanks or missiles, but with secrets, deception, and information. And even today, it leaves us with an important realization. Sometimes the most important operations are the ones no one ever sees. And sometimes the truth behind them is even more complex than the mission itself.
If you found this story as fascinating as it really is, make sure to subscribe to Strategic Archive for more deep dives into secret operations, hidden missions, and the untold stories that shaped the world. I'd also like to hear your thoughts. Do you think this operation was a genius move, or was it ultimately a failure from the start? Drop your opinion in the comments below, because your perspective might inspire the next story we uncover. And if you enjoyed this, don't forget to like and share it with someone who loves uncovering the hidden side of history. Because in the end, the most powerful secrets aren't the ones we discover. They're the ones that were never meant to be found.